everyone, welcome to the latest stream of React 2025, and today we're going to be finishing up some of the payments work that we started in the last stream, and we're also going to jump into setting up our project for better SEO, search engine optimization, and finally we're going to throw some analytics on as well. So here is the outline. First, we're going to kind of check out the current state after last time, do a quick walkthrough. I'll show what's changed, talk about some pricing tiers, and add some checks into our logic, do some SEO work, and then add some analytics. Hopefully we'll be able to get to all of it, but without further ado, let's jump right in. So last time we set up Stripe, and we set up the Stripe Firebase extension, and what that looks like if I go out to prod right now for fast feedback, and I go to my account, I can upgrade, which will invoke Stripe's checkout flow. I can view my billing portal, which will take me to the Stripe billing portal, where I can then change my subscription, I can cancel, I can change which credit card. Everything that has to do with my account can be managed inside of there. So I'm actually already on Starter right now, or Premium. So if I go then into view my billing portal, this will redirect me over to that dashboard, and we can see which tier I'm on. So one gotcha from last time that we stumbled on a little was you have to create a new customer inside of the Firestore database for the webhooks to recognize and connect a Stripe customer with a Firebase instance in your database. So I can show a quick example of that. What I had to do with my dev database was essentially reset the users so that when a user would log in, the account creation process would happen again, and then a new user would also be created inside of Stripe. So you see we have users here, which then get created on our users table. And if I go over to Stripe, you see that it also syncs them over to Stripe customers as well. And then if you check out, it will add your credit card. So you have your checkout sessions as well as your subscriptions. So what's changed since last time? One thing that I talked about was the loading state on the buttons. And what that looks like is just a simple one-line use state for React. Is the billing loading or is the checkout loading? If it is, what I'm doing is forwarding that prop onto the button component. That's pretty much the only thing that changed. On click, instead of going directly to that billing portal or to the checkout flow, we're gonna set that loading state to be true. This is kind of where we left off last time. Since then, I've went ahead and knocked out some of the UI work before the stream so that we can get rolling. So if we now jump over to what I have running locally, this is the new and improved account page. And what we're looking at right now is basically all just static data that I've mocked up with this UI and coded. And now I want to turn this into something real and actually pull off the role of a user inside of Firestore and display that in the UI. So my user is on a premium plan, right? The role is premium, and the Firebase extension will sync that with Stripe and add a custom claim to my JOT so that when I log in with my application, I don't have to do anything special to know where at in the subscription flow my customer is. So what we want to do is on this dashboard, we need to read that value so that we can determine accurately which tier we're on and then update this. Before we do that, one quick note that I want to mention that I thought was kind of interesting. As I started to look into this, it posed an interesting trade-off with Firebase. So the pricing tier model that I had in my mind was you'll have a free tier and then you update to the starter package, and you can have up to 10,000 pieces of feedback, right? So, you know, if you're a massive news site or something that hopefully adopts this website, you're going to have a lot of feedback, and I don't want to incur all of those costs on my side as the number of reads on the database goes up. So how would I calculate this value, right? We have a feedback collection, but there might be just a ridiculous amount of feedback for a given user or even for a given site. So how can we accurately sum up the number of feedback for a user? And this went into a little bit of a rabbit hole, and what I realized was that the ideal way to handle this for Firestore is to create a cloud function. So we don't want to calculate every single time on the fly how many rows there are in our collection, how many documents there are, because that could be a lot of reads. Also, we don't want to do it every time we write to the collection, because then we would be using up a lot of instances of Firebase functions. So the preferred method here is to create a cloud function that basically sums up that on a given interval. So for example, for this dashboard, I might have a serverless function that runs every day that will sum up all of the number of feedback for all of the sites that I have as a user to calculate this value. If it goes over that threshold that I've set, then I can do some kind of UI or tell my customer that, hey, you know, you've just hit your limit and you need to either bump up to the next tier or not. I decided that I'm going to punt that problem down the road a little bit because I really hope people use this product and that I get people that have, you know, 10,000 instances of feedback. But in the essence of trying to build out this, you know, really small company of one product here, this SaaS business, I'm going to try to knock out the most important things first, right? So that's just a little precursor on that. So let's jump back into actually figuring out what the role is here, because this should say premium for my account. And in doing a little research on this, looking at the example that we looked at last time, you get to pull that custom claim off of the jot. And I confirmed this a little bit too, even looking into the docs. So we should be able to do something like this, probably when we are fetching our user and our auth file. So we've logged in and we have our user. Inside of here, my guess is that we will want to get the current user, get that ID token, and then do something with it. So I guess we could just take this, we'll put it in here, and we'll just log this out and see if we're getting what we would expect. Interesting, this isn't asynchronous. We've already imported Firebase inside of this file, so we should be able to access auth just like we do down here. So get the current user, get the ID token, and then log that out. Okay, that is accurate. That's what I would have expected. It logs out premium. Now we just need to forward this to our component by making our hook return that value, right? So we are returning our user and we're setting our user in the state which we expose to our components. So we just need to add this Stripe role as part of that user. It kind of feels to me like it should be part of the format user. And by that I mean, should this just be like a stripe roll. This isn't going to return that value directly though, because we have to get that decoded token, get the claims, and get the stripe roll. Maybe this should just be a little helper function, like get stripe roll. That looks fine. Okay, that looks good. So I would think we should be able to comment this out. And then if I go into account, right, this is where I'm consuming that use auth hook. Let's see. Line 10 on create user. Something is not working. I'm wondering if that, I probably need to be awaiting this because I'm guessing it was returning a, I probably need to be awaiting this because I'm guessing it was returning a promise. Let's just double check. Yep. Well, I'll keep that console log in there. Yep, okay, that makes sense. Stripe roll the premium, okay, cool. So now we have that stored on the user object, and I'm debating whether this should be pulled out into the Firebase library file, because while it is specific to auth, I wonder if there's a case where I'm ever going to have to use this somewhere else in the application. For now, I'm going to leave it, but it's something to consider. So inside of here, we have context of the user, and somewhere in here, I'm hard coding free. So what we really want to do is render out see. The way this is set up, at least how I had it initially, was I had this settings table that was basically just a UI component for this specific piece, and then all of the React children that I would forward to it would get rendered out inside of here. This is a really nice way to compose components together when really all this is doing is handling display logic. But it does pose an interesting situation here where now I'm trying to access a value of the user, but I don't have that value. And there's really two ways you can go about doing this. You can either pass that as a prop here. So I might say, I want the, what do I want to call this? Pricing tier. Stripe roll. You could either do it like this, where there's user.stripe roll, and then you have access to that value inside of here, or you can use that same use auth hook inside of here and just access directly. I don't know that I necessarily prefer one way or the other, given that this is a pretty small file. I honestly could probably just move this back in here. So for now, I think I'm just going to go the prop route. We use optional chaining here because when we're loading, that stripe roll won't be available. So I take the stripe roll, I destructure that in the props. So we have stripe roll, and we also have the child prop, children. And now I should be able to include that here. Nice. So one thing I debated, so if you're free tier, then it might do one thing. If you are On the starter tier, it would do another thing. And if you're on the free tier, sorry, premium, free, and starter, 3 tiers. I'm getting confused. This looks good. We would just change the variant color based on what tier that was. I think I'll leave that for now. I mean, it might be nice UI polish, but I don't know that it's huge. And I could also see, for example, on the starter tier, the number of sites that we're going to, let's see, where's that at? The number of sites that we're going to pull, at least my initial thought was the starter tier would only allow 1 site with, you know, a large amount of feedback, and then the premium tier would allow you to have however many sites you want. So I might just change this for now. And maybe we should pull that here as well. I don't know if it makes sense to have this starter duplicated here. It should probably be more specific to the limit. I'll just say unlimited sites. Maybe I'll let the beta users that are gonna demo this and, you know, try to implement it in their applications, I'll just automatically give all of those people and everyone watching the course live, I'll give them the premium tiers. So just to reiterate what's going on here with some of the UI changes, manage billing is the same thing that we had before. View the billing portal. That's going to do the exact same thing, but you'll notice I have some commented out code here. And that commented out code was the upgrade to starter, or essentially change what your pricing plan is. And I think that's probably what we'll get to next. We talked about the cloud function, show the pricing tier. No empty state. Yep, okay, we'll do this next. So on the sites page, if you have no sites and you're on the free tier, you don't have the ability to create a site, right? I want people to be able to create accounts so that anybody can leave feedback, but if you want to actually then use the site and add your own sites, then you need to be on some kind of paid plan. So to do that, my thought was on the sites page, instead of this empty state, there would be an empty state like this that says, oh, okay, you want to add a site. First things first, you need to upgrade, and that would actually be the thing that invokes this function. So I want to explore doing that. I also am curious if I go in here and change my plan. I know that this will sync back and update the claim on the jot, but I don't know if I need to refresh that jot. I guess we'll see. I also need to make this return go back to the account page, I think. Let's do that. Window.origin. I know we're doing that somewhere. In DB. So we do want this value, but it's dynamic, so we're just going to wrap this with a string template and do /account. That looks good to me. I might want to make this dynamic. Because when you upgrade, I might want to redirect you back to your sites list. Regardless, let's see if that worked. Very interesting. So it still shows premium. If I go to my database, look at my user, I'm on the starter subscription. It saved off that Stripe role as premium, which maybe we don't want to do because that could be confusing because it seems like there's kind of two sources of truth. So what I'm wondering is if inside of here, it's not getting the most up-to-date ID token. And maybe that's why this was happening inside of here. Because this is only getting the result, it's not necessarily fetching a new token. Interesting. Okay, that does it, because now it fetches a new token that has the correct package. Just to come full circle here, let's change this to premium, and it should redirect back to account. Man, I really like this Stripe billing portal. It is so nice. Saves me so much time. That did not work. Let's see. I guess this is for checking out, not necessarily for the... Oh, I missed one. Okay. So for checking out, which is what we're going to be doing next, I just upgraded. I want to go back to... It's actually fine the way it was, because it's going to take you back to your dashboard. But for go to billing portal, that should go back to the account. Okay, so if we go to our dashboard, which I'm debating renaming this to sites as well. Curious your feedback if you think that makes more sense. But looking at a list of sites, let's go to the sites API route, and we'll just say don't return any sites, assuming that we didn't have any, rather than going in and deleting all of that stuff out of the database. And we will go to dashboard. We'll refresh the page. Okay, so it says that you haven't added any sites, but in reality, if my role was on a free tier, I would want to show this message. So what I want to do in here is only show this message if I have a Stripe role. So we go and fetch some data about our sites. We're going to be able to look at user.stripe role to know if we're paid or not. So we go and get some data. And then inside of here, if we have some sites, we show the site table. Otherwise, we're going to determine if we want to show the empty state. So let's see. I might want to just do it like this, or if there's some site data, we'll return this. Now we get into here where you're in the empty state. So if I have a Stripe role, then this is going to be the what should we call this? Upgrade empty state. If you don't have a Stripe role, wait, no. If you do have a Stripe role, show the empty state. If you don't, show the upgrade empty state. Yes, okay. Let's go back to our components. We'll take our empty state and just copy pasta and do the upgrade empty state. And save that. Close this. Okay, that's imported. And now what we can do for now is just say that this stripe role is going to be false. Well, I will just comment this out and we'll focus on just developing this first because my user has a stripe role that is a starter. And if I go into the empty state, let's get some of this copy. Get feedback on your site instantly. So previously we have this add site modal that we're showing here. Instead, what we want to do is steal this button.
This is my first time.
And then I think there's some stuff we can get rid of up here. Loading state. And get rid of that from here. Go back to here. So now I have the loading state for the button. I need to import this checkout session. My editor has got slow on me, so I'm going to kill this really quick. I'm going to reload my window and see if that speeds up VS Code at all for me. Let it load. Okay. Come on. Oh, there we go. It finally worked. Auto import. Let's go. Okay. What else am I missing here? I need to import use state. I'm going to need the user. Basically the exact same thing that we were doing here, pulling the user off of use auth. I'll just close this for now. Pull this from here. We don't need sign out. Restart our dev server. So I would expect to see upgrade empty state. I would not expect to see that. Nothing was returned from the render. Oh, yep. So I defined this, when I switched it from just the implicit return with the parentheses to use brackets, I need to throw a return on here. That allows it so that I can put hooks inside. Making some progress, but what else am I missing here? I just needed to refresh. Okay, so this UI state is assuming that I'm a user that's on a free tier and I have no sites and I need to upgrade. So clicking upgrade to starter should take us to, okay, loading spinner, that works as I would expect. Takes us to the checkout flow. And this should redirect us back to that page. So that's right. We just don't have this check inside of our dashboard. So now the user would have a stripe role and you would just see the empty state. That looks good to me. And then clicking this would be the same flow. One interesting piece there though is this add site button. It triggers the same modal, the same interaction. So if you notice, the upgrade empty state also had that because it's part of the header. So it almost makes you wonder, See, this is a really tough part for me, is when you, we talked about this earlier in the account page, it's when you draw the line on forwarding props or using hooks, right? Because now inside of here, we need to get access to the user stripe role, but we basically already fetched that here. So it seems kind of silly to pull that all again and make this just a presentational component. Because basically, if there's a stripe role, then we should just not even show this. Or wait, if there's a stripe role, allow them to add a site. And then I wonder if this should be even more clear, right? Like, what is a stripe role? I think I get it, but if I look at this code in 6 months, would it be more clear if I said is paid account? If it's a paid account, then show the empty state. That might be a little bit more clear. Is paid account. Naming things is so hard. It is so hard. It definitely makes more sense in this context, right? It only allow you to add a site if it's a paid account. So if I change this to false, then I should not see the add site button and I should see the other empty state. Nice, that looks good. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's see. The next thing I want to talk about is SEO. So as I've been developing this app, if you've noticed, the page titles are not set. The only place the page title is set is on the home page. So we can do better. You see I have fast feedback defined on the home page. What that looks like is I'm going into the head, which just taps into the document head, and I update the title tag. So what I want to do is I want to populate a variety of different assets that will allow us to customize not only how our site looks in the browser and which tags it displays as the title as well as the favicon, but also how it looks on social media using Open Graph. And to do that, what we're going to do is utilize a package called next-seo. You could absolutely do this yourself if you want to, but the thing that I like about next-seo is it's a pretty solid API that makes it really easy to add all of this information into your app. So the way it works is you probably have some kind of default SEO set, and then you can override it on a page-by-page basis. So, my cat is meowing at me. What this looks like on my site is I have a next-seo config, that's the default config, and this defines a few values, like the title, the description, the canonical URL, and then some tags for Open Graph, as well as a Twitter handle, which this will help with your Open Graph previews on Twitter. If you've never seen what this looks like, you can do a Twitter card validator. And if you type in your website and preview card, you'll get to see exactly what it looks like when it gets shared on Twitter. So if I were to do this right now for fast feedback, it's not going to look good. Unable to render card. So what I want to do is make this a lot better. So first things first, let's add the next-seo package. Another thing that I've done behind the scenes in preparation is generate a favicon set. So the favicon, if you don't know, is this value right here that displays by the title. And there's a really helpful website called realfavicongenerator.net that allows you to take an SVG or a PNG and download a favicon set that you can use to then embed these in the head of your application. So I've already done that, and it gives me all these files over here on the left, as well as defining just an image for what I want to display as the card on social media for my Open Graph. So if I go over to here, I'm just going to take this next-seo config.js, and let's just make a new file, next-seo config.js. We'll paste this in and update some things. Easiest way to add comments or reviews to your static site. That's my tagline for now. Description. Fast feedback is being built as part of React 2025. That's my title, description, my canonical URL. The canonical URL is basically your way of Google knowing what the original source is, like the true authority of that URL. So if, for example, it was cross-posted in multiple places, it knows that the original source of the content is what you're defining with the canonical. Inside of Next.js, there is a public folder which serves up static assets. So you don't have to do anything, they just get served up in the file system. So localhost or your deployed application /og.png is going to be that Open Graph. Should be. Oh, whoops. I have to throw static on here. Oh. That's because my server isn't running. And the static is because I have a nested folder on my own website. You don't have to do that. You can absolutely just do this, and it looks like it's a PNG. And there's no Twitter for now. That will change at some point. There we go. Another thing I want to do is take the favicon that I generated, which is just the logo. Let's drop that out and replace the default Vercel one. I did a hard refresh there and I see that update. That's being pulled in my document page. Inside of the head defined here, there's a link to that favicon. So we have our default set of SEO for next-seo. The next thing that we need to do is consume that. And the way that you do that is through this default SEO value. I'm doing it at an app.js level. Let's go ahead and do that. And then this SEO is going to be pulled from the root. And I also need to import this. So now, if we log in and we go to our dashboard page, we should see the default SEO here. And on our index page, I can get rid of this title since I'm going to fall back to the default. So, okay, so on our dashboard page, see if I hover over this, should pop up. It's not popping up. Okay, that's fine. I will inspect, and if you go look at the elements, and we look in the head, we're going to see all these values properly added thanks to next-seo. So that's good, and it's fine for what we have so far, but we also want to customize it on a per page basis. So to do that, if I were to go into, say, a different page, you can pull next-seo and override whatever values you want on a per page basis. So if I wanted a different open graph value, or maybe I just wanted to update just the title and the URL, you can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. That looks good to me. So there's really a couple ways you could do this, right? You could absolutely make a kind of higher level page component that encapsulates this logic for you, and then you just pass in those values to the component, and it handles next-seo under the hood. I'm not opposed to that, especially if we're going to be using this dashboard shell kind of everywhere. We could put this logic inside of the dashboard shell and just say what the title of the page is, and we could also, if we really want to get smart about it, we don't even need to hard code this URL. We could just look and see what the current value is in the URL. So let's go into the dashboard shell, take a look at what we're working with. Yeah, I don't know that I love that specifically for the dashboard shell, because this still feels like a very presentational piece of our application, and I'm not sure that I want to mix that logic. I'm going to start with a page component, and we'll see what it looks like. I guess the question is, what more would I put in that component? Because if it's only going to be essentially using next-seo, then it doesn't really make sense to just put a layer of abstraction there when all you're going to do is forward props down to that component. I might have come full circle here. Where it gets a little tricky though, right, is here I'm doing a return in 3 different places. So it almost needs to be in this dashboard shell, or the dashboard shell needs to be part of a larger encapsulated component that handles not only the UI, but the SEO piece as well. With coding, there's really a million ways you can do things and not always necessarily one right way to do it. So it's always fun for me to kind of talk through the trade-offs and understand why this may or may not be a good solution and why I might want to use one over the other. So for now, let's just say we're going to pass in a title, and I think the way I want to do this is they should all be prepended with fast feedback. The URL, for now, I'll just do this like this. I don't know that I love that. I should be able to pull that off of like window.origin, I'm guessing. Or location. So would it be path name then? And will that get screwed up when trying to statically render this because the window doesn't exist? That's a great question that I'm going to find out right now, after I import next-seo. Shoot. It's a named export. So that actually looks accurate to me. So given that we have this, should be able to say this is the path, and then this will be fast feedback.io / the path. That looks good to me. Title is okay. Getting fancy on mine now. Yeah, that's kind of annoying. I guess this is really the name of the page, and we don't need the route. And I almost wonder too, right? Is this always going to be a one-to-one mapping of, like, this is the dashboard page, right? So should I be requiring all of the consumers of this component, essentially the 3 places on here, to all pass in a name prop? To me, that seems a little odd. It might make more sense to just take the path here and capitalize it. It's not too uppercase. Do you have to do the first letter to uppercase? I know how you do it with CSS. JavaScript, capitalize first letter. This has got to be something that's really easy. Do you really have to slice out the first character? Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. Yeah, I mean, CSS is so much better here. Is that really what I want to do? Oh, we're gonna do it. I'm gonna do the deed. So take the path, take the first character, uppercase it, and then slice the rest of the string. And then throw that in here. I guess it's not the worst code I've ever seen. Let's check our meta tags, make sure they're looking accurate. So it still has the slash on the front. So I probably want to take I could uppercase the character at the first index, and then I think that would still work. What is this? There we go. So that looks accurate. The URL is not accurate because there's a slash here. And now if I go to a different page, say the account page, I should see fast feedback account and then the proper URL as well. Account. Awesome. Good. So we have some SEO there. That's awesome. The next thing I want to do is just set up a little bit of analytics. Part of my intention with this application in fast feedback is I want to provide a platform that is, one, easier to use and integrate than Discus, because I'm not a huge fan of Discus, even though it's very popular. And I want to be very transparent in, one, not only how the application is built, obviously because I'm doing it all live as part of a course, but also going forward, I want to make sure that the code is open source and that I'm respecting people's privacy. So because of that, I don't want to use an analytics tool like Google Analytics. and I want to be very transparent about which data I am keeping as a user in Firestore about the customers in my application, and being very explicit about that. So I've actually ended up switching over all of my analytics over to Fathom, which is a really cool company that I recommend you check out. I can just quickly show what this looks like. I have it on 3 sites right now, and I want to add this into here as well. So I'm going to quickly do that. Okay, so I added a site, I get a site ID, and what I want to do is add the Fathom client. And this is a little helper package that makes it a little bit easier. Let me just double check that's spelled right. To set up Fathom. Yeah, Fathom client. And then inside app.js, there's really only one piece of special sauce that you need, which is for our application. This wraps all of our routes. Only track analytics if we're in production. If we're in production, load Fathom, pull this site ID from our environment variables, and then explicitly include domains. So let's take this, go back to app, and for now I will just do this. Fast feedback, that looks good. And we also have this where we're listening for the next router when we do page transitions. When that completes, we want to track page view. Okay. And I'll need to import a few things here. Import Fathom and the next.js router. That looks all good to me. Okay, so I've restarted my application. I'm gonna see if I can see requests being made. Oh, well, I guess I'm not in production. Oh, use effect is not defined. See, this is what I was nervous about. Window is not defined. I wonder if it's fine that only gets set. Trying to decide if I want to move these inside of this nested block, and then these values that would be passed would just be null unless you are on the client side. I don't know that I love that. This feels like I should be not doing this. Because I wonder if that's going to run into issues when I try to build my site and it's trying to build it from the server and window won't be defined. I think I'm going to have to pass those values in. I tried really hard to get rid of it, but I think I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to come back to this because I want to see if Fathom is working first. Okay, I see a 200 loading the Fathom script. That's good. Verify site code. I wonder if because I have the domains set to only the deployed version. I might have to comment that out too. Okay, cool. That works. So I can put this logic back, knowing that it's properly configured. Back to this conundrum. If window isn't defined, I wonder if there's anything on the next-seo README about this, because I'm assuming that you can't do that on the server side. Okay, so how painful would it be if I had to pass in titles and names? So assuming I had to do this and I passed in the name and then the path, maybe I could make this more clean if there was only one dashboard shell being returned at the bottom. So for example, this would essentially just get set to a variable. This would get set to a variable, and this, it would either be this, or this, or this, and that would all just render inside of dashboard shell. Or I could also have this dashboard component, what gets exported as the default. There could be another one that is like the dashboard page. And really all this is going to do is render a page and then the dashboard. Because the dashboard takes in no props, it would basically just be like this. And then this would be the default export. And this page component would handle that logic. That's not terrible to me. I don't hate that. So this would take in like a name and a path. So it would look something like I can live with that. So I'm going to pull next-seo out of the dashboard shell. Instead, I'm going to throw it in a new page component. And it's entirely possible that I will add in more things to this component as it grows. But for now, it's just going to take in a name, a path, and then some children. That looks good to me. Okay. Let's see if this is still working as we would expect. Page name, path. Title, URL. That all looks good to me. Path is not defined, dashboard shell. I'm currently not seeing anything. Why is that? I wonder, is this page screwing up something? So somehow this page component isn't working as I would want it to. I have a name prop, I have a path prop. That all seems fine to me. Page is clear, but its value is never used. How is that happening? Oh, there we go. Just had to update. Okay, so name, path, children. Oh, okay, I think I remember now. I don't think that next-seo takes children. So I think what I should be doing here instead is putting this inside of a fragment. Like this. Pretty sure that was it. Yes. Yes, it was. Okay. So, is this working as I would expect it to? Fast feedback dashboard, that looks correct, and the canonical URL looks correct too. Okay, sweet. That works. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about today. We talked about what we did last time with payments, what's changed since. We added in some checks to look at the jot and pull off the stripe roll so that you know which pricing tier you're on. And then finally, we did a little bit of work with SEO and analytics. So we're making great progress on this, starting to finally come along. Thanks for everybody who tuned in live, and stay tuned for the next one. Cheers.